The Eucharist. It's been a central Christian ritual for 2,000 years. But what if I told you that the ceremony you know today, well, it's not how it all started? Let's dig in and uncover the really surprising origins of one of the world's oldest traditions.
So, when you think about the First Communion, what comes to mind? Probably a really solemn reenactment of the Last Supper, right? Well, what if the earliest historical evidence points to something completely different? A ceremony where Jesus' famous words, "This is my body," were never even spoken.
Yeah, you heard that right.
You see, for historians, this is a massive puzzle. We just don't have any kind of instruction manual, a step-by-step guide to how the Eucharist was celebrated in the very first decades of Christianity. And that lack of evidence, it sparked this huge scholarly debate about how the ritual we know today actually came to be.
Okay, so the big question boils down to this. What role did Jesus' famous words, "This is my body, this is my blood," play right at the beginning? Did the earliest Christians build their entire service around repeating that moment, or did those words get added into the ceremony much later?
All right, so this whole debate basically leaves us with two competing theories. Theory number one, the communion service was always a direct reenactment of the Last Supper, with Jesus' words right at the heart of it from day one. And theory number two, it suggests the ritual actually started as a simple Jewish-style Thanksgiving prayer, and those super famous words, they were woven in over time.
Now that second theory involves this really fascinating concept called embolism. And no, it has nothing to do with medicine. Think of it like this. Imagine the musician is playing a song, and to give it more power, more impact, they drop in a famous iconic guitar riff from another song. That's kind of what embolism is. The theory suggests early Christians did something similar. They took their existing Thanksgiving prayers and inserted the powerful words of Jesus right into the middle to give them a whole new level of spiritual weight. Okay, so to get to the bottom of this mystery, we've got to play detective and look at the evidence. And our first clue is an absolutely incredible document called the Didache, which literally means the teaching. This thing is one of our earliest Christian texts outside of the New Testament itself. It's a huge deal.
So, let's put this into perspective on a timeline, just to see why it's so critical. The Didache was written way back in the late 1st century. I mean, that's incredibly close to the time of the apostles themselves. This makes it an invaluable snapshot, like a photograph of early Christian practice. It's long before the more structured, complex liturgies of later centuries, like the one we'll see in the Apostolic Constitutions.
All right, so what does the Didache actually say? Well, it gives real instructions. For the cup of wine, it offers this beautiful, simple prayer. Now pay attention to the focus here. It's a prayer of thanks to God for the holy vine of David. That's a metaphor for the family line and the promise that was fulfilled in Jesus.
And guess what? For the bread, it's the exact same vibe. It's a prayer of thanks for the life and knowledge that came through Jesus. You see the pattern? The core idea is gratitude, giving thanks. In fact, the Greek word for the whole ritual, Eucharistia, literally means thanksgiving. It's right there in the name.
Okay, and here it is, the big twist, the bombshell in our investigation. Did you notice what's completely 100% missing from these prayers? The most famous words of all. This is my body. This is my blood. They're just not there. Gone. Nowhere to be found.
So let's break down what that early prayer was all about. At its heart, it was a blessing, an act of giving thanks, and you can really hear the echoes of Jewish mealtime prayers. The focus was all on gratitude for God's gifts, and it was also looking forward, anticipating Jesus' return with that Aramaic prayer, Maranatha, our Lord come. But here's the absolute kicker. There is no narrative of the Last Supper. This is a huge piece of evidence for that evolution theory we talked about.
Okay, hang on, because now we're going to jump forward in time. Let's fast forward about 300 years to our next big clue, a collection of texts called the Apostolic Constitutions. And by the time we get to 380 AD, whoa, something has dramatically changed.
So remember the simple, straightforward prayers from the Didache? Well, forget that. Now we see this highly structured, multi-part liturgy. I mean, just look at the flow here. You've got a rite of peace, prayers of praise, and then boom, right in the center, a whole section dedicated to remembering the Last Supper. And that includes the full institution narrative, the story, and the exact words of Jesus.
And here are the actual words from that 4th century liturgy. The language is completely different. It's now explicitly about memorial and sacrifice. This is my body broken for you. This is my blood shed for you. Do this in memory of me. The words that were totally absent in the Didache have now become the absolute, undeniable centerpiece of the entire prayer.
Okay, so let's step back. What is all this evidence telling us? When you put these two historical snapshots, the Didache and the Apostolic Constitutions, side by side, the evolution of this ritual just becomes crystal clear.
Let's just break it down really simply. On one hand, you have the late 1st century Didache. The core focus? Thanksgiving. The Last Supper story? Totally absent. The main theme? Gratitude. Now jump to the 4th century. The core focus is now memorial and reenactment. The Last Supper story is now the central element, and the theme has shifted to commemorating Christ's sacrifice. It's a night and day difference.
So, what's the big takeaway here? The evidence strongly suggests the Eucharist wasn't set in stone from the beginning. It evolved. It really looks like it started as a simple Thanksgiving meal, deeply rooted in Jewish tradition. And then, over centuries, it grew and transformed into the structured, dramatic memorial of the Last Supper that is much more familiar to us today.
And all of this leaves us with one last big question to think about. When we see how a sacred ceremony like this could grow and change so dramatically over time, how does that shape our whole understanding of what tradition even is? Maybe tradition isn't some static photograph from the past, but more like a living, breathing, evolving story.